So Sony Pictures International and Amazon Prime Video have paired up to release the Fear Collection. 3 movies from 3 of my favorite Spanish filmmakers, Alex de la Iglesia, who is the mastermind behind The Last Circus, Perdita Durango, and HBO's series 30 Coins, Jaime Balaguero, who helmed Rec and Rec 2, as well as Sleep Tight, and Paco Plaza, responsible for Rec and Rec 2 with Balaguero and Veronica. So I figured I'd take some extra time this weekend and check out what these 3 maestros of Spanish horror have to offer. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notification. It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be sure to tune in every day in October for my annual Best in Horror Movie Countdown, so be sure to check back here to ML Miller Frights. Every day in October, the clock is ticking. It's almost time. Veneciafrenia, aka Venice is to Die For, is available on demand from the Fear Collection, Sony Pictures International, and Amazon Prime. It's directed by Alex de la Iglesia and written by Jorge Garaychiavera and Alex de la Iglesia. A group of Spanish friends travel to Venice for sightseeing and fun, but once they arrive at the popular vacation spot, they're met with protesters who do not want tourists to come to their country and exploit their culture. But once past the protesters, the group managed to make it out on the town to a decadent knight dressed in classical French garb. Unbeknownst to them, a secret organization of masked terrorists planned to rid Venice of terrorism by making the streets too dangerous for them to come to. The group is led by a pair of brothers, one masked as a jester, the other as a plague doctor, who murder random tourists on the street under the guise of street performance. Veneciafrenia is another ambitious project from one of the most ambitious filmmakers currently working today. If you've seen Alex de la Iglesia's work, you know the man shoots for the stars with his concepts, and even when he misses, they're entertaining to watch. De la Iglesia is able to capture the theatrics that go into the many deaths at the hands of the jester with much flair, as the murderer kills without remorse in the streets. The scenes where the jester flips around and massacres passers-by is by far the most entertaining parts of Veneciafrenia, aside from the absolutely lavish and creative opening credits sequence, which is a marvel to behold in itself. The film plays out as if it were an old-time giallo underneath all of the performance and pomp. There's a masked killer, plenty of witnesses of the elaborate killings, and most profound in the narrative is the fact that the police are absolute dunces. Maybe this film is a comment on the lack of skill of the officials and police of Venice. I don't know, but man, are these guys idiots, unable to piece together missing persons reports and respond to cries of help with any form of expediency. In most giallos, the cops are 10 steps behind the killer and almost solve the crime by happenstance rather than any sleuthery. But in Veneciafrenia, these guys are practically Keystone cops, running around as one mass and being one-upped by a boat driver and a tourist at every turn. This makes the film play out in a rather cartoonish and simplistic way, right down to the boat driver and tourist accompanying the cops on the final raid of the terrorists' secret lair for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I can't say I liked any of the actors playing the tourists here. Most of them are depicted as disrespectful to the culture, ignorant of the country they're visiting, and downright vapid in their desire to simply party rather than take in the surroundings. Even the lead, Isa, played by Ingrid Garcia Johnson, who is celebrating her bachelorette party for the occasion, proves to be pretty unlikable by the way she treats her soon-to-be husband. In fact, though they take a rather drastic route, the locals have a point, and the film becomes something more like a case for nationalism and a case against foreigners more than anything else. I don't know if that was the director's intent, but it sure felt that way while watching. The scenes of street carnage and every scene with the jester played by Cosimo Fusco, who also plays the plague doctor, are the highlights of Veneciafrenia. The costume designs are beyond gorgeous and utterly terrifying as the two roam the dark street canals of Venice in search of tourists to kill. The wonderful set design and sunken buildings along the river also make this one extremely atmospheric and full of perilous mystery. Again, De la Iglesia's eye for making his films look amazing is prevalent here all the way through. But at its core, this is a lavish slasher with hints of Hostel in terms of the way it highlights the ugliness of tourism. It doesn't reach the cinematic heights of his previous works, but even A Misfire by De la Iglesia is a treat to watch. Next up is Venus, available on demand from the Fear Collection, Sony Pictures International, and Amazon Prime. It's directed by Jaime Balaguero and written by Jaime Balaguero and Fernando Navarro. An exotic dancer named Lucia, played by Esther Exposito, steals a shipment of drugs from a club she works for and goes on the run, but not before she is stabbed in the leg by one of the bouncers, slowing her down. She shows up on the doorstep of her sister, Rocio, played by Angela Grimonte, and her niece, Alba, played by Inez Fernandez, who are reluctant to take her into their apartment as strange things have been occurring in the building and people have been going missing lately. But with the mob after her, Lucia has no place else to go. Meanwhile, a planet has appeared out of nowhere in our solar system, and a solar eclipse is on its way. All of these elements make up a hodgepodge of a horror movie called Venus. This is a bug nuts movie if I've ever seen one. It combines elements of crime stories, supernatural tales, and Lovecraftian oddity, and somehow all of it works. By putting the solar system's strangeness in the background, playing on news reports and random small talk between lesser characters, the cosmic horror aspect is always in the periphery of Venus, but the main story of a woman on the run never takes a back seat until the outer space stuff is impossible to ignore in the climax. So while things are going bump in the night inside the apartment, we see a giant planet slowly moving in between the sun and the earth in space. Balaguero never takes his eyes off of Lucia's plight, which manages to ground the story that otherwise would be all over the place. The only way for this film to work would be to make the crime story compelling, and while it occasionally goes a little cliché with the gangster stuff, Balaguero gives a few of them standout personalities, such as the mob boss who has a spiritual side, and the moronic henchman, not so coincidentally named Moro. Venus is a film that'll keep you guessing. Just when you think you've pegged down the threat, something new and crazy pops up. There's an especially twisted demon that appears in shadows throughout, and finally is revealed closer to the end that is as disturbing as it is awesome. The effects are scant, but effective. This film is built more on impending doom than big CGI sequences. While I think some of the action sequences, particularly the final battle between Lucia and the group of gangsters, deserve to be a little more over the top, the film really ratchets up the tension to insane levels by the final reel. I love the way the supernatural elements were peppered in heavier and heavier as the story goes on, and before Lucia knows it, the threat of the gangsters outside are barely an inconvenience compared to the horrors inside the apartment complex. In many ways, Venus reminded me of 2011's Penumbra, an early film by Adrian Garcia Bogliano, as it involves a woman in peril with an impending eclipse occurring just in time for the climax of the movie. As with that film, Venus juggles genres with ease and manages to tell a cohesive story despite the multiple genre ingredients. The result is a film as uncannily unique as it is beautifully strange. Balaguero delivers a film that successfully combines Snatch and Rosemary's Baby, which is no easy feat, but damn it if Venus doesn't do it. Finally, we have the best of the bunch, La Abuela, aka The Grandmother. It's available on demand from the Fear Collection, Sony Pictures International, and Amazon Prime. It's directed by Paco Plaza and written by Carlos Vermut. Attempting to make it as a model in Paris, Susana, played by Almudena Amor, gets word that her grandmother has suffered a brain hemorrhage and requires round-the-clock care. Being raised by her grandmother, Susana rushes back to Spain to care for her, but finds the job to be more than she can handle. Susana worries about her career in Paris while attempting to figure out what to do with her grandmother, but something strange seems to be occurring inside her grandmother's apartment, and the more Susana digs into her own shady past, the more she realizes she doesn't know her grandmother at all. La Abuela is absolutely horrifying. Out of all the things to be scared of, getting old and helpless is probably one of my biggest fears. Seeing what Susana goes through in order to keep her grandmother comfortable is heartbreaking. Filmmaker Paco Plaza and actress Almudena Amor exemplifies the stress, constant work, guilt, sadness, and frustration one goes through while caring for an ailing relative. Above and beyond all of the supernatural stuff going on, this is a story that will make you feel for the lead and the unwinnable situation she's in. Because Plaza illustrates how arduous this job is, you really feel for Susana for making the great sacrifice to make sure the person who raised her is safe and healthy. All of the humiliation of shitting the bed and bathing someone who can't do it themselves is depicted in excruciating detail in the opening half hour. It's that real-life horror that La Abuela captures so well that builds the foundation for the supernatural stuff that is yet to come in the rest of the movie. Amor is wonderful as Susana. While she is highly involved in the vapid world of fashion, it's a wonderful arc seeing her struggle with actual emotion in a profession that requires so little. It's because she is so likable and sympathetic that this film works as well as it does. But the standout is Vera Valdez's brave performance as the ailing grandmother. The elderly woman puts it out there for all to see. It's not a glamorous role, but it's a terrifying one you're not going to easily forget. Once things do start going bump in the night, it's evident that Plaza is a master at building tension and evoking an utter feeling that something downright dreadful is right around the corner or crouching in the shadows. He's a master of suspense, as evidenced in his amazing Veronica and mastered in La Abuela. It's nothing we haven't seen before, just a young girl with a phone light cautiously walking through a dark apartment, but Plaza makes every minute absolutely nerve-wracking, with the payoffs to these builds being just as potent and terrifying. If there's one criticism I have for La Abuela, it's that it sort of gives away what's going on in the opening moments. This is not a new story Plaza is telling. It's an emotionally powerful one. It's an absolutely horrifying one. But if you've seen your fair share of horror, you get what's going on in the first 5 minutes of the movie. This doesn't make the rest of the film irrelevant, but I kind of wish there was no opening sequence and we were left clueless as to what was to come. That said, La Abuela is another terrifying masterpiece by Plaza that really stabs the heart. It exemplifies the fear of old age in a way few movies do. With stellar performances, a thick claustrophobic atmosphere, and a climax that will take your breath away, La Abuela is an example of chilling cinema at its best.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're